Welcome back, everybody, to the second video on To Your Outs, our new channel. Me and Justin want to just start pumping out some content for the game. And what better way to do that than showing off his finals match against George on his Pony Sunatori deck. And we're just going to go through the match and really just hear Justin's thoughts on it and how, the decisions going into the match, decisions in the middle of the match, his sideboarding, and really just his thoughts during the game.
Yeah, I'm really excited for this one because, to my understanding, you were a little preoccupied. So you did not watch this one, I think, is what you said, as closely.
Yeah, I saw some of game 2.
Yeah, and I think game 1 is going to be a very exciting couple of starting turns here.
Yeah, and so going into the matchup, what were your thoughts? Because I know you had some pony opinions early in the weekend. You came up to me on Friday with some opinions about Pony Sunatori.
Yeah, I think she can just kill you, right? So it's so my main goal here is just to stabilize and get to turn 3, because I think about turn 3 and beyond, if I see the right set of cards, she's just not going to kill me. Noticeably there, I'm going to fail some very key cards that I don't think matter in the matchup out of my hand. So military ship, I don't think that one matters too much. I think having to play that one turn 2 is just going to be annoying. So I wanted to go ahead and fail it out so that I could draw a few more cards here. I'm going to draw a very unfortunate hand 1. I think that I'm very happy with my decision here. But I drew 2 Imprisoned, a Crisis of Confidence, and a Heaven Piercing Ice Wall. I'm going to check a 3.
Oh my God.
I'm going to check a 3. And I'm going to check a 3. So we can start thinking about game 2. Offer it. We can just figure it out. We'll go for game 2. It is what it is. That's a little bit extreme, but I was thinking that a little bit. I was kind of down, figure out game 2 and game 3.
I had no idea it was this bad. Only you knew how bad it could be.
Yeah, luckily we do have an acrobatic style, so we're gonna make sure to ready that. Can't forget that one. And then I was tanking a little bit on Imprisons here, but I think my only hope, right, is to make it as hard for George to kill me right now. And luckily, George's deck also makes it very hard to kill me. So we're back in it. And that's what I mean by an exciting 2 turns of universes. This is what the game's about, right? This is what makes the game the game. This is what makes it truly great. I do also have a team hero, so it could obviously be a lot worse. We're gonna go ahead and pull a Yelena's in here. I think having the draw matters a lot in this matchup. Pony obviously gonna throw a lot of attacks, so having some way to on defense. Make sure I have plenty of cards in hand is going to be very good here. Finally, check a 5, by the way.
Yeah, the Relenna's revealed an attack. I was like, oh, yeah, so that's the game we're playing, huh?
Yeah, exactly. Got it out of the way, though, luckily.
I guess it was equally... At least the variance was fair, quote unquote.
Yeah, it definitely was fair this game 1, or at least these first few turns. I think it turns a little bit less fair towards the the end of game 1 and certainly for game 2. But I that's the cost, right? We'll see as we get to it. But I think one of the things about this match in particular that we learned is that your deck building choices do matter, right? The amount of attacks that you play and what those attacks check do have an effect, right? They are going to make the game easier or harder randomly.
Mm.
Yeah, we're gonna go ahead and make sure we get the freeze 2. At this point, we're just in full lockout mode. I think we need to make it where George has as few foundations on his turn as possible. I also want to talk about, I actually really do want to talk about my Imprisoned decisions on turn 1, because they ended up influencing the rest of my Imprisoned decisions for the rest of the game. So notably here, I ended up taking the 2 draw cards, because in making his turn as hard as possible, I decided the way to do that was probably going to be make it where he also can't draw cards. So make sure he has as few foundations as possible. Make sure he doesn't have access to free draw, right? Like make sure that draw costs by actually using his character, right? For the rest of the match, I'm basically going to do that. The ones that I'm going to choose to keep locked down are the draw ones, and I think that's probably the correct decision because for the most part, this pony deck doesn't have a lot of impactful foundations otherwise, right? I think Aaron's sidestep can matter a lot, but I'd rather just see him use them, right? And they are kind of a form of draw, but I think offensive draw is the one that is hard for my deck to deal with if he just like gets the number of attacks necessary to kill me.
You remember to use the Yelena's outwit.
Oh yeah. That so Dean's bringing that one up, I think, because I mentioned during teams about 2 different matches where I'm like, yeah, I forgot Yelena's. I built it down like turn 1 and then forgot it existed after flipping it. I think my Yelena's usage over the weekend got exponentially better. For the most part, I always used it kind of aggressively, just because I wanted the extra card in hand, and I kind of preferred burning Yelena's over my character response for the extra draw, unless I'm playing into a deck that gets a lot of speed. So you could argue that's Pony here, but and we're gonna see the 3 check go through. That is, I'm sorry, check to 0 on that one, with the breaker 2. So at this point, I'm feeling pretty decent.
It was a 1, right?
No, it's breaker 2.
No, like he checked.
You're right. He was trying to play the lethal slash. That's what it was. At this point in the game, I'm very happy with my position. So I'm just gonna keep playing cards that keep that position very good. So we're gonna see Fighting Patrol and 3 Inspiring Songs. And at this point, we've amassed so much momentum that we're really just trying to make sure that we can't get exploded for a turn. I'm gonna tank slightly and then decide to go and hit the draw here as well. I think Aaron's sidestep was kind of the decision point there, but I do think hitting the draw was better. But for the most part, we're just gonna hope that George's deck continues to kind of make the game hard on him, and make the game easier on us, and hopefully not get exploded by Pony randomly. It does turn out that the 2 imprisons we saw were very good. I do think those only ended up being good on turn. I think out of what I had in my hand, that was the best decision I had, was to play the 2 imprisons, because there's a world where it's like, oh, play Heaven Piercing, but after we saw what I checked on turn 2, that would have gone even more disastrous, right? Which is kind of why I went with the line I did, because building 2 imprisons is basically freeze 2, right? It's basically the same thing. In the beginning of the turn, they will be committed for him. But on, the Heaven Piercing Ice Wall on a 3 check fully commits me out on the first one, so that's why we didn't go with that, or at least that was the idea.
Yeah, the imprisons are a permanent resource that you get to have access to for the rest of the game, whereas the Heaven Piercing was I don't know, is transient the right word? Not permanent.
Yeah, exactly. They it is only there for 1 turn for the most part.
So I have to imagine you're feeling pretty good here because you have the triple Inspiring Song if things even remotely start to get dicey.
Yeah,
and the Fighting for Control
as well. Exactly. The main thing I'm like being cautious of is I can't be using like Inspiring Song and Fighting Patrol in the same thing, which is why we're actually going to go ahead and just make it like, a theoretical breaker 2 without me having to block. The other thing that feels very good is George only has ponies clear, which he is going to use here. But Wishheart itself is not one of the cards that clears itself. And I'm thinking he played this one mostly either for the stun 2 or for the value. And then I also feel pretty good about the fact that we have a My Fighting style. So if We end up seeing a Hunter's Ally, which I think would be incredibly risky here anyways. We do get to, commit and freeze whatever gets built off of Team Hero. Yeah, he's looking for the fighting for the control there, but I'm obviously going to be good with the 3 check here.
Do you remember what your blocks were for this turn? Like the last 2 cards in hand?
I believe it is 1 or 2 attacks. I think it's a card that I'm good with reviewing. It might even be like an acrobatic style or something like that. Or it is. I was holding high blocks at this point with one attack that like I'm down to just hold for the rest of my life to hopefully actually put some damage in.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I'm debating that less inspiring song because the name of the game here is making sure that we don't die. And honestly, might have been 2 attacks. I don't remember here is the biggest issue. We'll see off of this block. Oh, it was a breaker 2 block. That's what it was. Which I'm always going to feel very safe with breaker 2 blocks in my hand. That's I think one of the key things to fight this opponent matchup is having breaker 2 blocks. It looks like it was a Team Hero, so I was probably debating whether to full block this or whether the half block take a bit of damage was okay here.
So you're just, I know we talked about this in the first game or first match. You're kind of just analyzing your hand to make the best decision before, like, how did you explain it?
Yeah, so I prefer tanking at the beginning of the turn because I think that it matters a lot that you have a game plan going into your turn so that you do not accidentally miss anything, right? So that you don't get halfway through the turn and then be like, oh, this plan was horrible and I've now lost the game, right? So one of the things that we're going to be thinking about the most here is not losing the game. Because, well, if we lose the game, then we're not playing anymore, right? So I'm going to go for like a very modest line. I do start to think about how to win the game. You see me peak at my momentum, and I think I've gotten such a critical mass of momentum, including some defensive cards in my hand off of my momentum, that I'm actually going to go for a very interesting play where I'm just going to kind of slam an attack here. It's going to be an Inventor's Creation, just to actually get cards into my hand. And I do take on it for a while because I think this is a sort of risky play. But like it kind of says, hey, either block this or you die. And then in addition to block this or you die, I'm going to like have a hand that both kills you going, into the next turn, or like gets me all the cards that I need. Oh, this is the very interesting judge call. So we have a chance to PSA. We have a chance to PSA as George and I look very confused here. Don't shuffle your momentum, kids. Apparently your momentum is in a set order and you're not allowed to touch it, which is a holdover from back in the day when we could not look at our momentum. And remembering where your momentum was like an actual skill, an actual challenge. And it was a game that both you and your opponent played. Obviously doesn't exist anymore nowadays, but that is I did get a warning for that in this finals.
What's in momentum? I think over the course of the game, I remember being like a team hero, a protector of life.
A walk the dog and should be another attack. I think it's a heaven piercing, but we will see here in a moment. I'm kind of debating whether to just send it all or not. I'm kind of like looking and seeing what's important here. I realize like where my thought process is the High block on Team Hero matters. I'm gonna send Protector and Walk the Dog for sure. It might actually be an Inventors. Yeah, it looks like it's an Inventors. I do decide to just send all of it. This turn in particular, what I'm setting up for is going to be, I think I'm going to be able to block basically everything I need to be able to not take 12. And I was thinking that this risk is kind of worth it off the fact that I have a Fighting for Control still, off the fact that I still have Inspiring Song. Protector of Life is very good. I still have Yelena's. And I ended up actually getting the Queen block here. Which made me feel very good as well, that I'm not going to have to see that one on his turn. And then, of course, I also have the Godzilla versus Mecha Godzilla here. So the main thought process here is just that while there are absolutely better hands that have that more guaranteed disrupt pony turn, I think my hand is good enough. And I'm also setting up so that I don't have to keep just defending against Pony turn after turn after turn until I just don't draw the right blocks. Instead, I've put Pony on a 1 turn timer, right? Because as soon as I play Inventor's Creation, Walk the Dog, I probably win the game. The only thing I have to figure out an answer for is Armor Clad, and then I don't think that one's too hard to find an answer, especially because if we build any amount of foundations right now on George's side, we're going to run into that Undercover Infiltration that is the very nasty, nasty deadlock that my deck has access to. I think because of students, I also should be fine here, even if Pony gives everything +2 speed.
You still prioritize the card draw with your Imprisons instead of the Armor Clad?
Yeah, like I said, I think the card draw is just overall more important because I really don't want Pony to just kind of get free reign and start being able to fix their hand so that, even if they don't kill me, they can build 3 extra cards, right? Keeping Pony down on resources matters a lot. It's going to make attacking a lot easier. I accidentally tank here on my fighting style and then realize it says asset, or it doesn't say asset, but it's fine. We're going to be able to use my fighting style on whatever foundation we want to build with Team Hero, which is still plenty good.
And so, what are you thinking with your blocks defensively this turn? We'll end up seeing what you actually do, but are you prioritizing the? So you end up blocking with high block. Why would you not block with the Protector of Life here?
Yeah, so the high block was able to pass on a 5. So it's just a little bit more profitable. And then there is a little bit of zone mix-up that Pony is allowed to do here. So I'm going to make sure that I don't run into the zone mix-up by accident by just keeping the Protector of Lives. So there's a world where George just starts making things low. I don't think that's how George wants to spend his pony counters, his horn counters. However, I'm going to leave it open just to make sure that I don't lose the game off of him doing that. That's the main idea here. Once we got we Fighting for Control 1 and then he checked a 3 on the other. We are feeling pretty good. I think Fighting for Control, the way to think about Fighting for Control is if it's basically a guaranteed commit 2 on every attack until they check poorly. And then it's still guaranteed because actually it's one that we just didn't have to spin. They just hold the 3 check, right? So basically until they check 5s, they just sit there face up. And once they do check 5s, it's a guaranteed commit 2. So I always think about it with my Imprisons and my Forceful Negotiators, just as a way to make sure they stay committed down. I end up opting not to Godzilla vs. Mechagodzilla for 2 main reasons. I personally think that it gives a little bit more information on what's in my hand by pressing that button here. Because that's going to tell George that I have an Omni block, right? And I did end up drawing another Omni block. And I thought I had enough speed hate that it was fine for me to not pick it up here for the -1 to Prague. I guess technically picking it up and then blocking with it again would be the same thing. But the other thing that it mainly does, that is very good for me, is it makes it where if George opted to not throw an attack at all, I had only one thing to review, which is going to be something that I think about in a lot of the times that I'm playing Mitchell. We're always going to want to review. So not only do I look for things to like have in my hand to review at the beginning of the turn that aren't attacks that I would rather be playing, to be able to get that momentum. But I also look to only have one thing to review, right? I want to otherwise have a hand full of attacks, which was the goal here. The other thing is that we're looking at 3 here, or 3 foundations up, now 2, because the third one was from the team hero, which is going to get commit and frozen. And we still have Roman cancel up. So I think I'm in a really, really solid situation here, because I just don't think, especially through a fighting for control, I think I can block at least 2 more. And as long as I can block 2 more and then Roman cancel another, I think there's just like 0 ways that I die here. I did do the math and ended up inspiring song myself, as I am going to need the plus to my block here, in order to make sure I don't fail it. And that's just also keeping my stage healthy in this blocking turn. On a 6 there, we check the 6 off of inspiring song, and then we're going to pick it back up. Theoretically, most attacks with max speed are like 4. We set it to 2. He sets it back to 4. It'd be 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. And we can we check a 5, tap out with our character, and could still block it. And then, like I said, that in addition to having the Roman cancel is setting us up for very good success. And actually, we don't have to tap out because we have a student. So it'd be -1 more speed. I will say in playing, and we're just going to see the 3 check and the fail. I will say if you're new to playing defensive decks, at least defensive decks that aren't Rodan, I think Rodan doesn't have to do this type of math, because Rodan just kind of is able to block a lot of the times. Like it's not usually like Rodan just kind of blocks everything, right? I think when you're playing, here I'm just letting George know, instead of me shuffling, and that I have 3 walk the dog, so we could just go to game 2, save everyone's time if we wanted to. Both George and I are very good players. We know that 3 walk the dogs are just gonna end the game. Like there's not any amount of thought that has to go into that line. It is definitely just a good one. That said, while we're shuffling up here, like I said, if you're not used to playing defensive decks, one of the things that matters a lot and that you have to be doing constantly is you have to constantly be doing the math before the attack ever gets played on what the speed's going to be, what you need it to be, so that on a 5 check we're not committing anything. But also you have to do the math on whether you need to do the math for 3 checks or not, or whether you can afford to, if you check a 3, go ahead and commit the extra 2. That's the biggest thing. You just have to constantly doing speed math to make sure that you actually you're just staying on top of the stats, you're staying on top of the attack, and you're not letting it get too far away from you. That said, I do want to take the opportunity, since we did it last time. Dean, what do you think I sideboarded here? I'm curious about your thoughts. With I believe you have the deck list pulled up, hopefully.
Yeah, I mean, I'm assuming it might be a repeat of the setting out the inventors, because the low block might not be as good in the pony. We saw the wish hard. There's always the fear of the zone check. But don't think anything's like being crazy standing out to me. Again, it'd be like SSH picking up your flip effects that are really good at slowing them down, like Inspiring Song or Fighting for Control. But if you want less attacks,
good. I think there's a world. I think you're not wrong. I think there's a world that I sat on Inventors Creations, because they're just not as important in this matchup. However, that is not what we went for. We actually went for finally using one of our sideboards, the purpose that it was put in there, instead of just to side out attacks. And to do that, we sided in Icy Blade to counter the Scalen's hand that I assume George sided in.
Okay, so you want to make sure that you have access to the speed hate from Mitch.
Yes. I think if our character gets committed, the game, I think pony's kill turns get infinitely easier. I think they're like not even a challenge if we don't have our speed hate. In
And that's
addition to
more so
like
because
forceful negotiators, like we would no longer get any use out of those, right? Stuff like that. I think our entire game plan, our entire defensive game plan hinges on Mitch being ready. The games that I've lost most decidedly are games where Mitch somehow ended up committed.
and with the speed differences, a lot of ponies moves are base 4 speed. Basically, you're saying that the 6 speed of them would make it too difficult for you to block.
Yes, at least for us to chain block. Another I would also like to PSA for anyone who doesn't know the interaction between Icy Blade and Scalen's Hand. Reading those two cards might be a bit confusing as to how those cards interact in this game. When it comes to responses that trigger off of abilities that have the exact trigger ability but for the most part, that trigger off abilities in general. We do opt to go for the armor cloud here, by the way. I think that was the only one on his side that had text. I thought he had the one of the draws, but he does not. But whenever there is a responsibility that triggers off of an ability, that it refers to an ability that could do that thing. So in this case, Scanlan's Hand can commit your foundations. Therefore, Icy Blade, which says response when your opponent plays an ability that commits a foundation, you can respond to it. This is irrelevant as to whether they actually were planning to commit out your character instead. It just works against it. This is a little bit less confusing when you think about Scanlan's Hand specifically, because Scanlan's Hand also doesn't have them spin the momentum until
GG.
yeah. This one was rough to watch. This one going on a 2, hitting the breaker 2 on the 2 check is very hard. That's literally the only way that we have to fail our turn, right? And at that point, I am allowed so much tempo that it's not even funny. It definitely feels bad, but it felt good for our game plan to be able to win the game. Anyways. It makes a little bit more sense on Scanlan's Hand, luckily, because Scanlan's Hand, they don't spend the momentum until the ability resolves. So obviously you can cancel it before the ability resolves, no matter what they intend to do with the ability. Another one that works like this, just in case there are any new players out there, moment of normalcy and things that say like, oh, reduce the damage, right?
I do want to I do want to pause here because I actually saw this live and I was curious. Why did you Mitch response on the walk the dog? I'm not sure that the break point on that speed was as big of a deal as just Cardboard Crusadering it for speed.
I actually want to rewind. If I didn't, I think I probably could have just Cardboard Crusader for speed. Bigger number, better person, probably. The breakpoint on, I think it was just do Cardboard Crusader. So I responded first, and then after I responded, I started thinking about Cardboard Crusader. So it was just the smallest of blunders. Where also I do want to point out that I'm failing the undercover because I just don't think this is going to go to deadlock. The card I cited out for Icy Blade was actually just one of my deadlock power token cards because I don't think George is ever building into deadlock here. That said, to answer your question, I thought about Cardboard Crusaders after. I think Cardboard Crusaders give speed, don't respond was probably a little bit better, but it was a little bit too late. And I was considering give it speed and then Cardboard Crusaders for damage. However, George could have blocked with Queen of the Monsters in that case, right? Because we just -2 speed with our character with Pony, puts it down to 5 speed. And then we go Queen of the Monsters on a 6, check a 5, commit Pony. So a little bit that's I guess gonna be a PSA to do what I was saying earlier in the video and in the first video, which is to think out your turn ahead of time, right? I actually got ahead of myself on that turn specifically.
And then I think we've seen it a couple of times already. I want to point out with the team heroes. So you're firing them off. Why are you firing the team heroes off so quickly? Because the imprisons that you build in don't do anything yet.
Yeah, so this is mainly because, especially with how this Mitch deck plays, there are situations where the team hero could sit in my stage and I might not have an attack to play on my turn. So when my opponent enters the enhanced step, for whether I fire off a team hero is going to matter for two things. It's going to be, I'm going to look through, I'm going to see if I have any prime targets that are just playing good to fire off into a team hero. In this case, we're looking for stuff like imprisoned. We're looking stuff for like forceful negotiator, stuff like that, right? And then if I do have a target like that, unless I am very, very confident that I will enter into the enhanced step on my turn, I'm going to go ahead and fire the team hero because we're playing 4 of them and we want to see 4 of them. So I never want to get caught in a situation where I didn't fire off a team hero and then I draw a team hero, which did happen like once or twice over the course of Swiss and teams. And those situations just aren't very optimal. Sure, it's a 1 high, but in our deck that's like very greedily playing 4 imprisons, we actually want to see those 4 imprisons get built in. So because of that, we're gonna make sure, or we're basically gonna be a bit more aggressive with our team heroes, which I hope answers your question. Also, I do want to talk about that situation. Going into the Moth, I wasn't really thinking about blocking it. However, we ended up having George not give it innate speed, which I think makes sense. He's going to conserve his horn counters because I don't think it really matters if that one hits. So I ended up blocking it, just get the card out of my hand, and for the 10 or the breaker 1 was what mattered there, which did end up mattering, right? We ended up having to play on a 1-2 instead of on a 3, and then we ended up on a 4 and checked a 3, right? So it did matter a bit there.
At least with this turn, I imagine the writing was somewhat on the wall with the grip that you're looking at in the stage that George had.
Yeah, so we will spoiler a little bit that we are going to eventually do the math and the walk the dog is going to be enough. However, my main goal this turn was to heaven piercing without getting armor cladded. So we opted that the freeze 2 with 3 imprisons that would leave him 1 foundation up mattered more than having a breaker 2 in our hand. And I would stand by that decision, I think, for the most part. However, we're going to, once this one hits and we put George to 12, we are going to end up doing the math. And we are going to forget about our power tokens. So make sure you always put your power tokens somewhere that you're thinking about them. Earlier in this match specifically, or in this game specifically, I had the TTP power tokens taken from me. So I'm going to blame that. I think if I had the TTP power tokens, I'd never forget about them. But we're going to do the math here. And the math I'm doing, again, was a little bit of a mistake, which was just whether it's going to kill off of Cardboard Crusaders and Powerful. And basically, I'm just trying to decide, do I think with the inspiring song that he can block the 7 low, and he cannot. So that's why I end up playing it. And he also sees probably that I have power tokens, so I can give it 3 speed with Cardboard Crusaders. But
That's me.
Give that one. Oh, am I gonna be quick enough? Nope. That's why.
Too slow. Yeah, it's fine.
There we go. It was
I rush the stage when I see the handshake.
Yeah.
Same with Mitchell Cimino, the character you were playing, the guy.
He actually popped out of the card. That's what happened there. So that's a little bit behind the scenes for you. But yeah, I think this one was a lot more straightforward than the Andrew match, only because this is classic aggro control, right? We are trying to get to a late enough turn in the game that we have control of the match and that we can't die. And George is trying to blow our head schmoove off, right? Like we're just, so I think it's a bit straightforward. I think if I can distill anything to any particularly new players, it's going to be when you start out with control, it's all about doing the math. I think if you want to start with a control character that really, really forces you to do that math, sometimes at the beginning of their turn on whether you'll need the -2 speed later or not, it's going to be a character like Mitchell running 4 forcefuls, because so many times you want to go ahead and commit that forceful to commit them down. But if we need the -2 speed, we're not allowed to do that on an attack that we're not going to end up blocking, right? So I think a character like Mitchell really forces you to think ahead, think 2, 3, 4 turns ahead, and make sure that you're always on top of it, and that you know the game state you're going for. But with that said, did you have any more questions for me on this match in particular, Dean?
Only would you have changed anything in hindsight, like with your deck building, your game plan, your strategy, your sideboarding?
I ended up being very happy with my deck building. I went to 2 LCs, which were the majority of my testing for this event. And both LCs, I made what I felt were very pivotal changes to the deck after each one. And I think without those changes, I don't win Vegas. Just point blank. Turns out testing before a regional, very important. But there was things like during LC season, I'm going at the Mitchell deck with much more of a testing mentality. And so there was things missing from the deck that I know are good, right? For example, walk the dogs are missing, right? And then there's just other things that I learned while playing the deck. Just as the deck early on was in much more of a, all right, I want to try all of these different things and I want to figure out which ones are the most important. So for example, we had 3 My Fighting Style instead of 4. And then I realized the interaction with Heaven Piercing and just how pivotal it is against stuff like Team Hero and Queen of the Monsters. So we ended up being on 4x My Fighting Style. I had only 3 Crisis, and then I played with the card exactly once. After the first LC I went to, I realized that card is exactly as broken as I think it is. So we went up to the 4th copy of that one as well. And then, stuff like Walk the Dog. I don't know if I mentioned this one already, but Walk the Dogs weren't in the deck because I know Walk the Dogs are a very good card in Mitchell. So I'd much rather play with some other cards to figure out maybe we should be on these ratios for this. And without that, I don't think I get some valuable knowledge on how to play the matchups and how to play the deck. So I really, really would not trade it for anything. Stuff like playing with Big Fist Bash and relearning that +3 mid block sucks. Oh my god, it's impossible to block with +3 mid. Jesus, And then
Yeah.
oh, sorry. And then I'll close off with I don't think I changed anything play style wise. I don't think I have any big notes. The literal only thing I have is like, don't forget about your power tokens, right? Like I sit there and I tank on the Walk the Dog for a little bit too long, which I think could easily be seen as like a little bit of accidental bad manners, but obviously it wasn't taken that way, luckily. And I did just have to slam it and play it and make the check. So.
And then, would you have played Bachelor Arrives at all? Was there ever a time you wish you had that card in your deck?
I think Bachelor Arrives is so hard to fit. I think there is a version of this deck that runs 4 Imprisoned and 4 Bachelor Arrives, and it's just being like really, really like almost toxic, right? With the amount of control you have over your opponent's foundations. I think it would have mattered there's some game states where like I couldn't really play into analytical very well. This mostly mattered in teams. In team finals, I had George. I ended up playing George again, and George ended up getting a much more healthy board on his kill turns, including being able to build in analytical without me having my fighting style. So I think something like Bachelors would have mattered there. But at the same time, having a my fighting style also would have mattered there, right? So I kind of turned this into a much longer answer than it needs to be. I don't think I will ever try to figure out how to fit Bachelor Arrives into an Order Mitchell list. But I think if you do and it works, you could have toxic levels of control over your local meta and their foundations, and you could really make their foundations your own,
And that's it for your tournament run. I think Absolutely. This is literally the penultimate match. There is not more content from here on this run.
Yeah, I do think that will be the end of our videos covering my run. I don't think we're gonna do any type of deck profile or anything like that. I think through other people's channels that I've been on and through talking about it through these matches, we gave much more insight than a deck profile could. However, if you have any questions at all, leave them in the comments. I will make sure to get to them. And then, if Dean also has the insight, he'll obviously get to them as well. But with that, I will go ahead and we can go ahead and sign out, Dean.
Remember, everybody, always play to your outs.